How to Resonate with Your Audience Through Content with John Yaworsky, Episode 204. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another great guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I'm excited to bring an amazing guest today, John Yaworsky. John is just an amazing individual when it comes to video creation and productivity. And I'm going to read his official bio, but he's done some amazing things when it comes to video production and things like that. And I'm super excited about this specific topic because there's so many different areas that video becomes important. And you're thinking, well, I'm a lawyer, I run a law firm, like why the heck do I need to worry about video? And the reality is that if you look around you, video is becoming such an integral part of our lives, whether it's the fact that we're subscribed to Netflix, Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, and I don't know what the other ones, there's so many of them, or we are on TikTok and Snapchat and Facebook and Instagram, where there's, stories and things like that, where everything is running on video. And we start to look at it, it's not just the marketing that we're doing. It's also how are we interacting with our clients and how are we delivering post-engagement with our clients. And we need to start thinking about where does video fit in these different places. And that's why I'm super excited to have this conversation today. So let me tell you a little bit about John, and then we're going to cut to our sponsors and we'll get back to a conversation that we're going to have with him. So John Yaworsky is an award-winning creative producer director with 20 years of traditional and new media production experience on feature films, commercials, online education, corporate communications, and documentaries. His company, Nimble Digital Media, focuses on the discovery and development of purpose-driven content that cuts through today's cluttered media landscape. I'm excited to bring John onto the show. Real quick, we're just going to have a word from our sponsors. Finding amazing employees is the toughest job for any business, and especially for a law firm. You deserve to be the law firm owner you've always wanted to be, but you can't get there without a great team. Get Staffed Up helps you build your all-star team by staffing your law firm with incredible full-time offshore virtual assistants. Work with Get Staffed Up to save money and your biggest resource, time, while they find you the best English-speaking VAs in the world. Hashtag delegate your way to freedom. Learn more at www.getstaffedup.com/VIP. As an attorney, you want to get more done for your clients while converting leads into new business. But your days are filled with drafting documents, meetings, court appearances, speaking with opposing counsel, and making sure no one falls through the cracks. This leaves you with little time to focus on your business. Meet Lawmatics, the most powerful client intake and marketing automation CRM built for the modern law practice. With Lawmatics, you can win more business, impress clients, and be more efficient. Go to www.lawmatics.com to book your personalized demo and learn how Lawmatics can help you grow your firm. Thanks to our sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a superior virtual receptionist service for small businesses. They specialize in working with solo and small law firms. I discovered Smith AI a couple of years ago and was blown away by the range of services, which are available at a cost any attorney, even those of you in the smallest solo practice, can afford. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in English or Spanish, screen and schedule new leads, and even take payment for consults. The best part is, they don't just handle these conversations by phone. They also have live agents and chatbots capturing leads on websites and via text message. If there's one growth hack to your practice, this is it. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines. They'll capture new leads while you work uninterrupted. you can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $210 a month for calls and $140 a month for chats. They even offer a totally free chatbot, so there's no excuse. Try Smith AI today and see for yourself why attorneys like Justy Nickel in Colorado say Smith AI receptionists are the secret to business growth and client happiness. Smith AI offers a free trial, and podcast listeners can get an extra $100 discount with promo code ProfitLaw100. That's ProfitLaw100. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Trust me when I say, don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI. Welcome back. Well, John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Moshe. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. So, John, I like to start every interview with my guests are wondering, who is this guy? John, tell us a little bit about yourself, some of the backstory around how you got into video and maybe where it's taken you to today.
Sure. So I've been in the camera arts for decades. It started out, my dad gave me 2 World War II era Leicas and built a darkroom for me when I was in grade school. And it was like adding water to chemicals. I became a photographer overnight, and I have been ever since. I have a background in fine arts background in photography, which branched into filmmaking and video production. So, although it started with fine art in the fine arts realm, I kind of have my feet in both areas, both in original content and corporate stuff and documentary storytelling, that sort of thing. So I really enjoy working in various verticals, work in various industries. I always try to keep kind of on top of technology. So it started pretty humbly with black and white photography as a kid. And it's gone into now, I'm pitching, doing a holographic telepresence video for Hong Kong right now. So kind of
wow,
the gamut.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I don't even know what holographic, whatever you just said is, but it sounds pretty complex and pretty different than black and white photography for sure.
Yes. Well, so one of the things that's exciting about holographic telepresence, not to go deeply into that for instance, but it's interesting. One of the things I try to do is try to stay relevant and on top of technology, both as a differentiator, but just to keep it interesting, but also use the best technology for the best application for the client. So it's not just using a hologram for a client just for the buzzworthiness, although it yields quite a bit of buzz. The idea is to use whatever's appropriate, most appropriate sometimes for a small nonprofit, it might be some simple case studies or testimonials or fundraising pleas, that sort of thing. To a major corporation, it might be internal communications on their philosophy. That might be, sometimes it can be involved, sometimes it can be just straightforward being introduced to the top management, the C-suite, all saying what their particular philosophy is. So it runs the gamut. I like to think probably one of the best things, or one of the biggest things that Nimble brings to the marketplace is that things that I've done for major corporations, I can bring to a small nonprofit, or I do something for a major client in Hong Kong, and then I can bring it to an education client that I have here in the United States. So I like learning things. I'm a lifelong learner when it comes to technology, but it still harkens back to those days when I was figuring out how to use a camera and an enlarger.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, and I love that you're always trying to stay on the forefront of technology. A lot of people shy away from that. A lot of people, put up their blinders and be like, "Oh, it's too technical for me. I can't do it." So being able to embrace that is already winning the battle before you even get on the battlefield, and I think that's incredible and speaks volumes to what you do and how much you love what you do. No, I want to jump into this conversation around video because you're a producer. You're focused on the quality of the content that you're producing, and I don't know if you are focused on the content, the intent of the content as well. But that's where I think the conversation needs to start, right? law firm owners are the listeners of this podcast, and they're not going out and producing cinematic videos, right? But I think that they need to pay attention to the marketplace to understand where video fits and their overall structure. And I talked about that briefly in the intro, and I know you were here listening to that intro. So that's where I'd like to start is, if you think about a law firm and what they do, marketing is an easy one to say, hey, you need to have video in your marketing, whether it's a video on your website that talks about your firm in a professional way. So it should be nicely produced and tell a story. And then social media marketing is a whole nother aspect. And I don't want to gloss over those, but I think there's a lot more opportunity for video beyond that. And I'm wondering if you have any insight and where a firm owner might want to start thinking about implementing video in the various aspects of what they do besides from marketing. I want to talk about marketing separately.
Absolutely. So this is what I do on a daily basis, to be honest. I talk to people. I'm never twisting their arm to up-res their production. I do talk to organizations all the time. It's like, it's fine to do selfie videos. I'm not anti-selfie videos, but I'm anti-exclusively selfie videos. I think we all get tired of seeing people, whether a selfie video or even there's a little bit of Zoom fatigue. And obviously we're on Zoom right now. It's opened a huge door of opportunity for people to learn and engage and that sort of thing. But I always try to come up with a media strategy with what makes most sense for to address your pain points, or just to engage the audience, or sometimes from a inbound marketing perspective. I know we're going to talk about marketing later, but just from a perspective of engagement, establishing thought leadership. If you're establishing thought leadership with a selfie video that's pretty simply done, that can be useful and handy. But what does that really say about your brand? If you step it up a little bit and do an explainer video, or something that teaches someone something, I think it says more about the brand and more about the respect that an organization has for their audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. And it's interesting because the marketplace seems to go somewhere and then we tend to go back. If you look at, I think the perfect example is look at clothing styles, right? Clothing styles change, but what was in the 80s is suddenly back in the 2020s. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that, where we go away from something and then the other thing becomes way more appealing, or because it differentiates you. So 10 years ago, when video was first starting to become mainstream on social, maybe it's not even 10 years, I don't know the timeline. In order to get people started on video, the coaches, the professionals, people, the marketers were encouraging people to just open your phone, turn the camera on and do something, because it's better than nothing. Put yourself out there. And I think now everybody has gotten used to just putting themselves out there, that now you need to start thinking about, okay, how do I now be different than everyone else? Because everyone else is putting themselves out there in this way by just unprofessionally putting their phone on, sharing their thoughts, putting it out on Facebook, putting it out on Instagram, Twitter, wherever it's going. And that is now it's leaving me mainstream. And we need to have a way of getting people to look and say, wow, I'm impressed with this. So it's not just the content, but it's also the impression that you're making. And I think that that's where one of my coaches says you always need to be trying to go against the flow. The zig and zag. When other people are zigging, you need to zag. And I think that that's very true here with video as well. Really what happened with law firms at the beginning was everyone needed to have this highly produced video. Everyone knows there's this company, Crisp Video. They made their name by doing these highly produced firm videos where they did a one and done, right? You spent $10,000, $15,000 on a highly produced video. It went on your website and boom, you were set. Those days are gone. Like you need a lot lot of highly produced videos
Right.
to really have that arsenal of content that you're going to use, whether it's in the marketing side of the firm and when people are first evaluating you. But I think that there's room for video content to be used in the engagement process while you have clients that are engaged with you. And this is where I've been bringing up these various ideas along the way with my coaching clients of once you start to rethink the business model of law and you're not billing by the hour, but instead you have these alternative fee arrangements and you're trying to be as streamlined and and get things done in as efficient a way as possible, you have to start looking at the thousands of hours of conversations you're having with your clients and look for the conversations that are the same client to client. And when you start to find those conversations, I think there's room to create some sort of communication or education product within the firm that you use throughout the engagement process to educate your client, not in the I'm educating you so that you become and retain us, but you're a client of ours. And now I'm educating you on what I need from you. I'm telling you about, so for example, somebody who's doing family law, you have to tell the client what the divorce process is like. Right. You have to tell them what to expect at each stage of the game. When they finish a stage, you have to tell them what to expect next. You can do that every time talking to the client, or you can send them a video and say, we've just completed this step. Here's a video that explains what you can expect next. They're hearing it from you, they're seeing you. And if that is professionally produced and is coming across in this manner, they feel like they were taken care of. They feel like you know what you're doing. It elevates your brand, it elevates their experience, and it saves you a ton of time, which is now going to your bottom line. It's now increasing your profitability. So I think there's a massive opportunity that's not being used right now, just in the way that we serve our clients throughout.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's one of the things, again, one of the things that I talk to clients all the time about is like, what are the things you're repeating over and over again? Is that the best use of your time? Whether it be in internal communications with your employees or to potential clients for onboarding or just in general. You want to be able to get people up to speed relatively quickly despite, regardless of what it is, employee benefits communications or onboarding or a new engagement with a customer. It's like, get the process down so it's understood. So, because as we all know, probably almost any process, going into it, certainly with a lawyer. And fortunately, I haven't been divorced, so I haven't had family law issues, but I can only imagine I would have 100 questions right up the bat, and they're probably the same 100 questions that everybody asks. So if you can tackle 70 of those and get them so they're kind of understood, then you can, when you have the time that you're sitting down with a lawyer, you can spend it, effectively and really get to the specifics of the situation. So I couldn't agree with you more about that. Going back to an earlier point you made about differentiator and doing high quality cinematic video. I always lean towards doing cinematic just because I'm a world cinema lover and I love cinema. But it certainly isn't appropriate for every situation. Back in the day, well, Francis Coppola said at some point years ago, he said at some point a 13-year-old girl is going to make the next great feature film. Well, we've already hit that point. People have shot entire feature films on iPhones. It has been done by, all sorts of things, easily DIY. I think anytime you have a spectrum from the 13-year-old kid doing a video with his or her iPhone to holographic telepresence or IMAX or something, super 70 millimeter for, Christopher Nolan sort of thing. There's a spectrum. Somewhere within that spectrum, there ends up being the sweet spot for the storytelling, for the price point, for the, all the different metrics that I need to know before I can make some good recommendations about the way to go. And then finally, your idea of ongoing content. That's exactly right. I mean, I tell people all the time, it's like, there's economies of scale. We do your logo, we do a nice little animation piece of your logo once. That's just a one-time cost. Then we can stockpile videos or interviews or statements, whatever, and do short, digestible, shareable video content that can be used for multiple purposes. We can shoot them all in a couple of days, or shoot a couple of days a month for the next 3 months and have content for the next 18 months. So I always try to tell, I don't always try, but in certain situations with certain clients, I say, let's do reasonably budgeted things, professional, not semi-professional, professional, but not cinematic, but do a lot of it. Let's figure out efficient ways. And I've had this with a couple law clients that I have here in Chicago. It's like several short, succinct pieces, but often is the way to go. I think it's definitely the way to go. And you have the little upfront cost with a little bit of treatment for the logo at the beginning, but that's just a one-time deal. And then the rest of it, the edit can be less expensive. The shooting can be less expensive. It's easier for me. I work with all sorts of crew people and talent and writers and animators. I can find a price point and a tier of people that I work with that fits that ongoing project. The number of projects. If it ends up being 20 shoots in the next 16 months or 18 months, it's like I can get a deal, and there's those economies of scale. So I agree. I think the tendency, what I've seen a couple law firms do, is that they start believing the hype about DIY, and they run out to one of the big retailers, and they buy a camera because they're an enthusiast on camera. They buy a tripod, maybe some lights and a mic. But what they don't realize is that the best use of their time, to learn how to edit, to learn how to use that stuff. Maybe it's fine to use at your kid's soccer game or whatever, or to slowly ramp up, but to expect that you're going to take, I've seen it at least 3 times in the last 6 months, that a law firm, they bought $5,000, $8,000 worth of equipment that would have been $30,000 or $40,000 equipment just a few years ago. So I give them credit for that. It's the timing is right for DIY in some ways, but then do they know the messaging? Do they understand the right wardrobe to wear? Do they understand the right a decent background that makes the most sense? There's a lot to, and then the edit is the biggest part of it. Do they really want to spend time watching YouTube tutorials learning how to edit? Is that the best use of a lawyer's time? I don't think it is usually.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There's a lot that we need to look at to see, is this the best thing for me to be doing? But I want to actually go to another question that I'm sure that people are sitting there thinking. There's a gamut of reasons why I might get behind a camera or share video in some form. You mentioned a bunch of them. I might be doing, my internal employee manual. So I'm giving instruction to employees. Here's how something is done. And I'm talking on screen, then I'm sharing my screen, then I'm going back on screen. I could do that in Loom, on my computer. I can, there's a web app that I can click a button and boom, I'm recording myself, I'm recording the screen. And I probably don't need to have this professionally produced for my employees to watch, right? So, but if I was running a 500 person company, I might want to have that professionally produced, right? So there is a spectrum, or there is a place where here it's worth doing that, and here it's not worth doing that. And what I want to know is there some way for somebody to figure out how to navigate some sort of matrix that they can use, or decision, questions they can go through to determine, am I ready to spend money on this to start to produce this in a more professional manner? Communicating with clients, right? There are applications like BombBomb or what's the other one? I'm forgetting the other one. There's another one. So there's a few of them where you can just literally, you open the app, you record a message, and then you send it to the person, and they get it as an email with a video in it, and they watch the video, and you can see if they watched it. You can make a button that they can click to take a next step if you want them to. And there's actually somebody, Devin Miller, who I've had on the podcast twice. He's a IP attorney, I think in Florida. But finding amazing employees is the toughest job for any business, and especially for a law firm. You deserve to be the law firm owner you've always wanted to be, but you can't get there without a great team. Get Staffed Up helps you build your all-star team by staffing your law firm with incredible full-time offshore virtual assistants. Work with Get Staffed Up to save money and your biggest resource, time, while they find you the best English-speaking VAs in the world. Hashtag delegate your way to freedom. Learn more at www.getstaffedup.com/VIP. As an attorney, you want to get more done for your clients while converting leads into new business. But your days are filled with drafting documents, meetings, court appearances, speaking with opposing counsel, and making sure no one falls through the cracks. This leaves you with little time to focus on your business. Meet Lawmatics, the most powerful client intake and marketing automation CRM built for the modern law practice. With Lawmatics, you can win more business, impress clients, and be more efficient. Go to www.lawmatics.com to book your personalized demo and learn how Lawmatics can help you grow your firm. Thanks to our sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a superior virtual receptionist service for small businesses. They specialize in working with solo and small law firms. I discovered Smith AI a couple of years ago and was blown away by the range of services, which are available at a cost any attorney, even those of you in the smallest solo practice, can afford. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in English or Spanish, screen and schedule new leads, and even take payment for consults. The best part is, they don't just handle these conversations by phone. They also have live agents and chatbots capturing leads on websites and via text message. If there's one growth hack to your practice, this is it. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines. They'll capture new leads while you work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $210 a month for calls and $140 a month for chats. They even offer a totally free chatbot, so there's no excuse. Try Smith AI today and see for yourself why attorneys like Justy Nickel in Colorado say Smith AI receptionists are the secret to business growth and client happiness. Smith AI offers a free trial, and podcast listeners can get an extra $100 discount with promo code ProfitLaw100. That's ProfitLaw100. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Trust me when I say, don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI. I mentioned him on the podcast like 10 episodes ago. Well, not 10 episodes ago from this when this is getting released, but from when I'm recording this. And he listened to the episode and he went and he sent me a video message. This is actually the second time he sent me a video message, but he did that. He didn't use BombBomb. He has another app he was using. And he holds up this board saying hi Moshe on it, so that this way I know that he made it specifically for me. And he sent it to me, and it was great to receive it. It felt wonderful. And honestly, I think that that's a great way to communicate with clients when you have an individualized message you want to send. So, but that's certainly not professionally produced, right? So there's all these different opportunities to incorporate video in what we do day to day. And then the question starts to become, well, where is it worth me spending money and time on? And where is it something that I can just wing it? Even without going out to the store and buying a professional camera, but just using my webcam, my iPhone, and some basic apps that I have available to me, where I could get the job done and do something more than I'm doing now, versus, going to that level.
Well, I think that's a good question. And one, I find myself trying to answer it fairly often myself for people. I don't discourage people from DIY ever. As a matter of fact, I love the process. I love film and photography and everything. So everything related. So I kind of like to share the love. I usually share information. It's like, okay, if you're convinced that you'd rather get a camera, here's the camera you should get. Like I'm still a sixth grader as far as gear and stuff. I'm kind of a little bit of a gearhead. And I feel like I do that almost daily, certainly weekly. But I think that decision, it's a tricky decision to when does it tinker, it's like get started, learn as much as you want, maybe learn a little bit of editing or those personalized email videos. There's certainly a ton of apps out there, but I think what'll end up happening, which is good, is that you'll learn a little bit more, you'll learn how to ask better questions when you do engage someone that's, to take it to the next level. So that's why I try to be as encouraging as possible. I taught digital cinema at DePaul. I found that just turning people on to things that I've taken for granted for a long time was extremely satisfying. I was turning students on to black and white movies or silent movies that they had never seen before. And then they thought it was going to be the worst thing ever. And my students would come back and say, that Buster Keaton, the general, I thought it was going to be terrible. And it's my favorite movie ever. So I like sharing, I like teaching. I try to help people make the decision when it's right for them to spend. I'm certainly not a hard sell guy. But I like to say, keep me in mind when you're ready to take it to the next level, if that makes sense. To this point also, I'll mention a little bit the way, not to historically timestamp us with COVID here, but we're at the end, hopefully at the end, with nearing the finish line with COVID here. So I have a lot of online higher ed clients and done a lot of online education pieces. So at the beginning, a year ago when this all started, I thought all my clients would be all the higher ed clients would be like, yes, we're ready to go online ed. Well, they were so caught flat-footed that they were using some of the apps that you're talking about, Camtasia and some of these other kind of DIY things. And the feedback I was getting was, for most of them, the deans, I work with the deans or the program directors or some of the faculty, and they were saying, I don't really like it. The students don't really like it. We're just getting through it here because it's kind of like crisis management to get through the material. But at some point, we look forward to stepping it up and kind of getting back to professionally done videos and having a hand. I'm all for collaborative. I mean, that's one of the things I love about working in film and video is that I like building a team where, the idea behind Nimble is that it's infinitely scalable. I can have a crew of 3, or it can be a crew. I did a feature film that I was managing 100 people, cast and crew. So somewhere between 3 and 100 on that spectrum is the size of a team that I like to build for people. So I'm not sure if I answered your question about it. I think it's tricky to come up with when is it right to shift. But I think it's just intuitive. I think most business owners, if they're given the information, or they see companies that are maybe a little bigger with a little bit of an aspirationally motivated, is like, I'd love to be, we're a 50-person law firm, but we are looking at what this 200 lawyer law firm is doing, and we love what they're doing. Maybe we can do something like that. Competitive analysis, or, I'm not a hardcore marketing guy. I've kind of done a fair amount through the periphery and just osmosis, being around it. But I think some of the simple things like that, just seeing what other people are doing and seeing what makes sense for your organization.
So I don't want to put you on the spot to talk about numbers, but I think it's important that we get some sort of idea or some sort of range or something. And I know that you said you can do anything in any budget, right? So if it's, I'm sure it's not any budget. I'm sure if I said, hey, I have $100, can you do 3 days of video production for me? The answer would be no, right? So, but you did say that you've got a list of providers that you work with that would make it possible for you to do any level of quality, based on where somebody's at. So for somebody who's just getting started with video, this is going to be their first foray into some sort of professional production. And they've got it to, okay, I know that I want to batch a year's worth of content that I'm going to release every week, but I've got all that mapped out. So I know that I just need 3 days. Right. So what is somebody looking at in a ballpark number to get that crew to come down and film them for 3 days and then have that edited into 52 pieces of content that they can release over the course of a year.
Well, that is a tricky question. So my response usually, and I just had someone ask me that yesterday. He said, "How much does a video cost?" It's just like a video cost. I mean, it's like we have to be a little more specific, and I try to do it with as much grace as possible. It's just like, well, there's a lot of are we doing a Zoom video and editing it? Is it motion graphics? Is it stock photos? Is there music? Is there narration? There's a lot of variables, but I don't want to say that there's so many variables that people go, oh, I can't even tackle this. I don't even want to go there. So in a nutshell, so I'm kind of in the realm of production days, post-production days, and maybe a little bit of strategy up front or writing up front, if that's the case. Often, if it's going to be a 3-day shoot, sometimes I'll give away the strategy up front. But for the most part, just ballpark to get things, for conversation or to kind of pique interest or thought. I kind of look at things as like a broadcast production crew. So a crew of 2 or 3, myself and camera and sound, and maybe a makeup artist or a PA, depending on what's involved, on location, not a set, but on a location, like at the client's office, that sort of thing. We're usually looking at $2,000 to $3,000 for a production day. That's kind of like a baseline, and it can go up. It's like, do you want 2 cameras? Do you want a dolly? Do we want a drone? Do we want, I mean, you can just, I don't have, people ask, well, can you send your rate sheet or your menu of items? It's like, I don't operate that way. I'm not an event videographer. I don't do weddings and bar mitzvahs. But so I don't have a list of things to tick off. I try to have a kind of a little discovery session. It's like, what is most important to you?
Right.
And then the price is basically the same for post-production. It's depends on, so what ends up happening is it's kind of like an interesting metric, because of, if you get a higher paid editor, they can do more fast, but you're paying more. So it's a delicate balance of, well, I want to get someone who's a seasoned pro that does global commercials, but I only have a budget. They might be $1,000, they might be $3,000 a day, but they can do everything in 2 days. Or I get someone that will do it for $500 a day or $1,000 a day, but they'll take them 2 weeks, and they might even be having to look at tutorials to see how to do some transition or something. So
John, let me give you a little bit of color. Okay, so we're talking about somebody who has no aspirations whatsoever. They just want to get started, but they know they don't want to do it themselves. They know they want to have some level of professional quality to it. So they're gonna jump in and they're gonna do this. Okay, so we're doing 3 production days. That's gonna cost me $9,000. I have a planning day up front. It's gonna cost me maybe a couple of $1,000s. We're at $11,000. Now, post-production recording, you're gonna then produce these deliverables, which is gonna taking that and doing whatever you need to do to give it a basic professional quality. And maybe you're throwing some underlying music in there. Maybe you're throwing some some stock photos in some of the video, but really not going crazy. And not worrying about who's editing, and you're gonna choose based on the budget that there's somebody who can get the job done but is not going to break the bank. What are we looking at for that production, that post recording phase, that production, so that we can look at, okay, this whole big picture, this is what it would cost to do that?
Sure. I think a good rule of thumb would be a post-production day per production day. So if it's 3 days of production, unless they're so 3 days of production, 3 days of post, and maybe a couple rounds of revisions. So maybe a 4th day, depending on how meticulous, how particular a client is. Some are like, we trust you, whatever. And then some have all the associates look at it, and then the associates have a tendency to think like, well, he's showing it to me, so I have to find a flaw. So sometimes you have people looking for something they want to change. I don't like the green dress, or I don't like the that tie or something, funny little minutia. But for the most part, as a good rule of thumb, I think a post-production day per production day. Now, having said that, and you mentioned 3 days, I mean, to be honest, 3 days is a luxury, a little bit of a luxury. We end up doing a lot. A production day is usually 8 hours. You can do a lot if you have a nicely laid out plan. You can do a lot in one day. I mean, really a lot, unless it means go from location to location, or sometimes it's availabilities with professional services. One of the biggest things is just scheduling, getting people all on the same page and in the same place at the same day.
Right.
So I've had that be the most difficult part. So don't underestimate how much can be done in a day. 3 days is wonderful. I mean, that ends up being, so in a hypothetical world, I would say like 3 days. We do 2 days of interviews and a day of B-roll and maybe a couple testimonials, that sort of thing. So that's kind of how it could play out. And obviously, the amount of posts would relate to that. If it's 2 days of lots of interviews, but on a day of B-roll, then it probably wouldn't be 3 or 4 days of edit. It'd be less, that sort of thing.
Got it. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the time frame. Like if my videos are 5 or 10 minutes long, and maybe I'm amazing and I do each one in one take, but if you've got 52 videos that you're producing and each one's 10 minutes long, that's 520 minutes of just the content that I'm recording. Exactly. Now you start figuring out for breaks and maybe some of them are need to have more than one take, and so that's why I came up with 3 days, just because of the sheer math of the numbers. But sure. You're right. I mean, it really depends on how long each of these videos are, whether it's scripted, you're reading off a script, or you're just kind of like going off the cuff. Is somebody interviewing you? Like what kind of content is it? And how quickly can you batch it out?
Well, since we're talking about that, you mentioned 5 to 10 minutes. Not to jump on you there.
Yeah, of course.
The one thing I will say is, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. Attention span. I mean, I can't even tell you how, we used to do 10, 15, 20-minute videos. Now a 20-minute video, it's got to be an amazingly compelling video to keep someone's attention for 10 minutes, to be honest. So now my recommendation, and I've done this with all my online ed clients or marketing clients, is a few minutes, many more, but 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I mean, 5 minutes is like the old hour. So 10, 15 minutes is almost verboten in my book now. I mean, you just don't even go there. You keep it all in manageable, digestible pieces. And that serves two purposes. One, it keeps it manageable and doable, but it also makes people wanting more. It's like if you watch a 10-minute video, chances are you're like, okay, I've seen it, it's like I blocked some time. I made coffee during that. I fed my cat. It's like I had it running in the background. But if you create a compelling, concise, succinct minute or 2-minute piece on one topic, you don't try to do everything with it. You maybe one topic, onboarding or initial engagement or whatever it ends up being. You make it as tight and simple as possible to get that point across. The person's going to be much more likely to say like, well, I'm interested to see what the next one. They can see a library of videos, titles, to be like, yeah, I'll check out the next one. It's only 2 minutes. Maybe 3 minutes if it's something a little more comprehensive of a topic. So one of my big arguments, I mean, I had an online ed client that had 40-minute videos that are like, we want you to raise the production value of these videos. And the first thing I did is like, well, we're never going to do a 40-minute video. We'll do 5 4-minute videos or 10 5-minute videos. But, it's like 40 minutes is, a really long time to have anybody's attention. Now, Netflix can do it, but that's Hollywood budgets. They have, Michael Bay films with things exploding, like that's how you keep attention for an hour or two. and chances are your clients and the kind of people you're talking to, we're not going to be blowing anything up. And it's usually not going to be comedy or stand up or whatever the sort of things that people want, really want to watch, or, a chess master. Some of these, shows are jolly old England, some of the things that catch people's attention for a long period of time. If you make it tight and succinct and organized. So that's why I say 3 days you can do a lot of content in 3 days, especially if you're shooting short bursts. And then finally, the one thing I did again with my online content, or my online course content at a major university, was I told the professors that I was going to use a teleprompter. And invariably, everyone said, I don't need a prompter. I've done this course for 30 years. I don't need a teleprompter. 10 minutes in, they realize, and I say, like, I have the teleprompter sitting here. It'll be there just in case we need it. 10 minutes into it, without exception, they said, okay, get out the teleprompter. They realized how much more efficient we could be. So we could do a week's worth of introductions before lunch, whereas waiting through it, going through it, and we can tweak the exact messaging. So I'm a big fan of teleprompter, even for people think that they know the topic. Sales guys have a tendency to think they've done it forever, but then all of a sudden the white light or the red light comes on the camera and they see they're a deer in the headlights and they've forgotten, or they get through the whole spiel, but they miss the one point. They do 5 bullet points, but they forgot number 6. And so you have to start again, that sort of thing. So I'm a big fan of efficiencies. I try to make it so it's not painful. I try to make it as fun and easy as on people as possible. My sets are always fun, loose. It's not tedious. We're lucky to be doing something creative, is the way I look at it. But let's come up with efficiencies and ways to make it fun and interesting and effective.
Yeah, and I love what you shared with the teleprompter, because I've been resistant about a teleprompter for a long time. But to your point, I found that when I do a podcast. This is a completely unscripted show. No matter, even my solo episodes, completely unscripted. At best, I might write some bullet points of things I want to cover and follow it. But the amount of times I do that, 1 out of every 25. It's completely just turn the microphone on and talk. So when I'm recording video, I'm the same way. I just think that I can just get behind the camera and I can just talk. And what I have found is that when I script something and I use a teleprompter to do it, as opposed to doing it on my own, it's the difference between a 5-minute clip and a 30-minute clip. For some reason, when I'm not reading off of a teleprompter, and one of the things that people are, I'm not going to read off a teleprompter, because you could tell I'm reading. But that's part of it, is as you get used to using the teleprompter, you start to get into the inflection and making it more real. And what I find is that I can record myself and do a 30-minute and make it as natural as possible. But now everyone needs to watch 30 minutes, or I can write a script and I can read the script. And I can do 3 or 4 takes, so that by the 4th take, it's really natural. It took me less time than the 30 minutes. And now the viewer only has to watch 5 minutes to get the point that I was trying to make across. So I'm a big fan of using the teleprompter. I do it a lot with now with the course content that I write, with marketing things that I'm producing in advance, not the ones where I'm doing it live. Even doing it live, I could. See, I use my iPhone as my teleprompter. I've got a little attachment on my camera that sits on the front. It's just a mirror, and I just slide my phone in, and I use an app on my phone, and I've got a teleprompter, and I'm able to do it all by myself. I don't have a crew. I don't, so when I'm going live on Facebook or anything like that, I technically could be using a teleprompter for that. So when you're producing intentional content, whether it's marketing, whether it's educational, definitely take the time to script it out. And then you also get to really think about how you want to present this, what comes first and how do I want to explain this? And you build all that into your script. So you're doing all that thinking beforehand instead of trying to come up with it on the fly as you're going.
Absolutely. And that's my experiences. And I never thought I'd get into media training and teaching professors how to use a teleprompter. But that hour of training and practice, it doesn't even take an hour, but for 1 hour would save 6 hours in the production process. So, and again, all the adjuncts that I was working with and all the professors, their time was so, just like most professional people, doctors, lawyers, their time frame is so critical. Every hour makes a big difference. So if we can crank out a day or 2 days worth of work before lunch, we have lunch together to bond as a crew and kind of reward ourselves. And then he runs off to his job, he or she runs off to their job. So it really, if there's one thing I'll impart to people is like, hopefully they learn a couple things from this, but if there's one thing, I think what surprised me the most of people's reluctance with using a teleprompter was somehow people think that the teleprompter just runs and you have to keep up. Whereas a good teleprompter operator, and you can do it you can set the speed on your iPhone, and there's certainly different ways to go. But a good teleprompter person, after a half hour, an hour of using a teleprompter with a prompter operator, you can't tell if the person's reading or not.
I even have this little teleprompter remote.
Exactly.
That allows me
scroll,
to just slow it down, speed it up, scroll it. Yep.
Pause. If you decide I'm going to go off script for a second, you can just pause it, tell a witty aside, and then start back up. So that was probably the biggest surprise that I had. Sometimes we're all learning things together, and that's fine. But I also was like, okay, one of my big things is I'm going to learn this on this front. So then I come to the nonprofit that might not have a budget, but I'll save them so much time and money by actually a little bit of expense by using a teleprompter. So it's a fairly big thing, I think. And then, or the other side of things is if you have motion graphics or something to cut away with, you can get away with maybe not having a teleprompter or still use a teleprompter, but you're not on the person every single minute of the video. So you have something to cut away to, whether it be infographics or graphics, informational pieces, stock photos, there's various things to go to. One other thing I'll just throw out there is we're not wed to this whole notion of one-on-one. It doesn't have to be a presentation all the time. Sometimes what makes a lot of sense, and I've done this multiple times, and I've actually done it with 2 teleprompters, but I've also done it without, whereas just a conversation. So you get 2 people having a conversation, kind of prompting each other. Well, that way, if you shoot at 2 cameras, you have something to cut to. So if the person misspeaks or stumbles or whatever, you always have a reaction or something. And it can be a nice, compelling way. It's like, okay, rather than have 2 videos with 1 person, we can have a conversation between these 2 associates or these 2 partners or whatever the industry is. And that is a very compelling way also. It's like, well, it's conversational. Sometimes the conversation is like really burned in. It's like you figure out a way to make it conversational, and it might take 3 takes to make it sound more conversational. But I think the thing to think about in overarching is that there's so many different ways to communicate in storytelling. I think if you see something in a film or something in a documentary or something on a newscast, something really resonates with you, make a mental note of that. It's like, that's something I'd like to do. I'd like to do something like, walking down the street with a drone following me, talking about the community investment in this new neighborhood or something. That makes sense. And that's when the visuals and the content, the text marry together to do something that's more of the sum of their parts.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're just about out of time. This has been a great conversation, really diving into the depth of how far you could go with video and recognizing that there are tactics you can take, like scripting and using a teleprompter, that can actually save you money on your investment. Maybe you can cut down to 2 days instead of 3 days of production. maybe you can actually have better content that's out there because it's shorter, because it's more concise and more specific. So definitely some really cool points that we covered here in this conversation. Now, John, I want to give you an opportunity before we leave. If anybody wants to follow up with you, they want to talk to you about potentially getting their video project off the ground, how would they get in touch with you? And then the other thing that I want to know is, if you want to leave our audience with one parting piece of wisdom or advice in relation to your wheelhouse of video, what would that be?
Well, as far as getting in touch with me, I would welcome. I'd love, just like I mentioned on the teaching thing with DePaul, I love being a resource for people. So I'm willing, if you're kicking tires or you're just thinking about it or you're brainstorming or early in the cycle, I love the ideation. I love being involved early in the process. So if it ends up being, let's just brainstorm a little bit and come up with an idea that maybe you won't do for 6 months or a year. As a matter of fact, I found that the sales cycle is so much longer these days, but I have no issue with that. It's fine. It's like everything has its time. So I urge people, they can reach out. They can find me at nimbledigitalmedia.com. My email is john@nimbledigitalmedia.com. They can certainly reach out on LinkedIn. I'm up for connecting on LinkedIn. I use it as a little bit of a database, and I refer people around with it all the time. So I encourage people to reach out, even if it's early in the process. I love the ideation. I think it goes back to watching the Dick Van Dyke Show, the thought of sitting around and brainstorming and coming up with writing a script. Or I think actually it goes back even to Bewitched, when when I was a kid watching Darren come up with ideas, selling ideas. I just loved that aspect. So I like doing that for clients. As far as a parting shot, I think I might just reestablish what I said about find things that resonate with you. I think everybody learns a little differently. Everybody responds to different media differently. For some clients, maybe not legal, but in some clients, I've done employee benefit communications. I lean towards comedy because that's a way to break through, because a 401k video can be pretty dry. But if you do it with comedy, it can be more compelling. But so my parting word would be, let's try to think of something that really resonates with you, that you think would resonate, the style, the format. It's kind of like a stew a little bit. It's like a couple different things come into it. Something that you've seen that really resonated with you, maybe a completely different industry or completely different genre. But take note, because chances are there's a way to do something with it. So that would be what I'd say. Find things that resonate with you. Anything's possible, whether it be a hologram, sending a speaker, a New York Times best-selling author to live to Hong Kong, anywhere to just sitting down and a person doing a little selfie video, or anywhere in between. Think about the message that you want to make, and think about storytelling.
Awesome, John. Thank you so much. I appreciate your willingness to come here on the show and spend close to an hour with us. So folks, if you're considering video, if you want to pick somebody's brain around your video ideas, it sounds like John has made himself available to you. Take advantage of that. Reach out to him, have that conversation, and get back to me. Let me know. I love to know when we made a connection that actually bore some sort of fruit. So let me know if you reached out to John and that conversation you had, and I'd love to know what you're doing with video. Folks, all of those links are going to be in the show notes right below this episode. So in your podcast player, just look at the description of the episode. You can also go to profitwithlaw.com to see the show notes for this episode. And there is something that you can do for me. You just spent close to an hour. We brought you an amazing guest. You got a ton of value out of it. What I would love is if you can think of one person in your network that could benefit from this episode and share the link with them. Tell them, hey, go check this out. If each of our listeners shared this episode with one person, that would double the amount of people that are listening to this show, and it would spread the wealth. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't be stingy. Give it out. let somebody else get it too. So definitely share this episode with others. We're here twice a week, so make sure that you come back on Tuesday for our next solo episode. John, thank you so much, and we will catch you on the next episode.
That's it for this week's episode of Profit with Law. If you have enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with at least one person. Imagine how many lives we can change if we each shared this episode. Another way to share the episode is on social media. We appreciate your support and look forward to you joining us again next week.